So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage, so then we can understand the time of the end. As per Yeshayahu the prophet, we find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. As we read then Yeshayahu the prophet, we always make the question why this great prophet was slain. Why was he then destroyed? Why then he was then sawn in half? And we should then make an evaluation why then the nation of Israel destroyed its own prophet. Let's then make sure we understand when a prophet dies by the hand of Israel, makes Israel a murderer. They are simply murderers of Yeshayahu the prophet. But not only this, but there is the spiritual implications of being involved in the destruction of the prophets. Let's then evaluate what the Messiah then has said. He is our example in every situation. We should always make sure we understand his writings and his teachings, because as we do, we make ourselves wiser, and then we become closer and closer to himself. Why then Israel destroyed its own prophets? So then, was it because of the Torah? No, it was not. What was then the problem that made Israel destroy its own prophets? The word is convenience. This is what it means. A person, when he is confronted with the convenience versus obedience, most often people make a choice on the side of convenience. So then, was then the Messiah on the side of convenience or on the side of obedience? It's very obvious. The Messiah himself, as he was then in a desert, he was then led by Ruach HaKodesh, and there he was 40 days. And he was there without eating. We find then ourselves studying this section because it is rather remarkable how the world then is so hypocrite as far as plain liars. You know, you can be a liar by being on the side of convenience. Yeah, it is true. What was then the problem as far as what the Messiah was saying when the word is then given in distinct types of soils? The soil that is rocky and then sandy and then finds a nice soil with lots of nourishment in it, so then when the word goes in it, then produces fruit. Now the question is, can the people produce fruit? Or they want to become on the side of convenience, repetitious convenience? Should we be cautious as far as making a balance of what is required versus then what the Messiah has told his people to do and observe? So then, what has led Israel to destroy its own prophets? Let's first then make an evaluation as far as Luke chapter 4 and understand the Messiah himself. He was a Jew. He was a Hebrew person. He was from the lineage of Yehuda. Let's understand the sequence of these author of the completion of the spring feast. Now, some people, they love and they absolutely like to hear others speaking of the Messiah. However, when they speak, sometimes it's not their way. What does it mean? Producing fruit. Is hearing the word, studying the word, and then producing fruit from your mouth. If it's convenient or not, you must produce fruit. What has the Messiah said? He said that a person then obviously receives the word, and then a person is trained, and then produces fruit. If you are a person only taken in from the world, and you don't produce fruit amongst the Gentiles, then a person has no use. Is it important of maintaining a congregation? Absolutely it is. Now, are they maintaining a congregation for their own conveniences? Or they are doing this so then the Gentiles can also understand the first principles of the Creator Yahweh Himself? And that's the point. There are a lot of people from the congregations, they only do for convenience, for a fun place to be at. And they want to enjoy the rot and the stench of these trashed world that we are living in, and they want to make fun out of it. You know, some people, they don't think, why then the congregations, why they dance? They only do the dancing because it's fun, but they have no understanding the meaning of dancing. Why do these people dance? Well, let's ask ourselves what the prophets said during the time, for instance, of Samuel. When there was an order given by the Creator Himself, sometimes people danced because they knew when the Creator spoke, the words He spoke came back to Him completed. Now, this world that we live in congregations, they only want the fun of it. Only the fun of it. They don't want to become part of it. They want only the fun of it. It's absolutely inconceivable that there are lots of congregations, they are joining themselves only to eat the sides of the field where the Creator Yahweh has said, do not cut the corners, don't harvest the corners, but leave those for the unfortunate and those who are Gentiles. It is amazing the way the miltha of the Creator Himself is stored on the corners of the field, and not very many people, they want to take part in planting the entire field, so then there is corners to harvest. What was then with the Messiah? Why then the people of his time did not like him? Because he did not put up with BS, either from congregations or from people of the Lord, anybody else. He's not interested in the BS of becoming convenienced. And he said, you must become the salt of the earth, seasoning properly. Now, some people, they don't want to put their lives on the line. So then it's very interesting, because the very objective of the Messiah himself is placing people's lives on the line. He placed his own life on the line. He had no guilt. Because he was sent by God himself for this purpose. No, he had made choices. He could have said, heck with you people, I had got no sin. I don't have to die for you. We compromise our understanding because we have sins and we know the rot that was in our lives. Now, if you had no sin, He wouldn't have given you your life for this world. Why Israel has destroyed its own prophets? Let's make sure we understand, for instance, before we become aware of our objectives as far as teaching and showing the Gentiles where they are at. They are eating the corners of the field that the Hebrews planted. And the most disturbing is there are some of the lineage of the Hebrews eating with those Gentiles and making themselves feasts of their own. Yeah, it can become so nasty at this point. Many of the Hebraic people joining up with Gentiles, lazy Gentiles, not wanting to understand the word, and eating from the corners of the field. Now, when the word was spoken by the Messiah, he was bringing a balance so then the people eating the corners would, in a gradual understanding, becoming part of the laborers in planting the field. Oh, but nobody wants because of trials and tribulations. Yet, when they are hungry, they come to the corners of the field. So they become this dead weight. Every time, never fit for service, always starving in eating what others have planted. Yet they don't lift a portion of the soil for others to plant. And they recline back, they don't want to be inconvenienced, and they have that calm, scoundrelous, lazy face. Have you ever seen those people? You talk to them as far as the holy instructions and the prophets and the writings, and then becoming part of it, so then a laborer can then plant the field rather than only eating the corners of it. No, they recline back and they don't want to be inconvenienced. Because the world doesn't understand, of course. The Messiah said this world is dying in evil. Now, if you are a person either from the lineage or a Gentile, always eating the corners and never truly seriously contemplating of learning and planting the field, so then others after your labor can eat the corners you have planted, then you should reevaluate your life. I don't care if you're a Catholic or if you are a Methodist or if you are some sort of a evangelical congregation of any kind or sort. You are eating the corners of the field and you do not help to plant it. That's who you are, that's what you do. The Messiah himself, what was his objective? Obviously, he was mikvahed, he was baptized, and then Ruach HaKodesh came upon him and had taken him to the desert. There he was trialed, and he was there for 40 days. When he came back, what was his first objective? What was then spoken by the prophets linked with the Torah? And the Messiah had to make sure people, they did understand a layer prior of his starting his own ministry. before any healing, any situation, any teaching of significance from himself. He had to make sure a layer of the Torah spoken by the prophet was explained. Prior of the starting of his ministry, it was 490 days. He was reading then a section of Yeshayahu the prophet, 61st chapter. What is then the favorable ear of Yahweh? Where do we find it? At the Mashiach, as it was the custom, he went into the synagogue, and the helper over there was giving him then the Megillah of Yeshayahu the prophet. It was a layer related with himself. Then the Mashiach, then he opened up the Megillah and began to read. What did he read? He read in the completion of the spring feast. Prior of the completion of the spring feast itself, he had the anointing in proclaiming the favorable ear of Yahweh. It was a favor on the side of the Mashiach? No, he had no sin. Was in favor on behalf of the Creator himself? No, he doesn't have any sin. Now let's try to make ourselves not so important, because what he was reading was for us. Lazy people always eating from the corners and never wanting to learn how to plant. The Spirit of Yahweh is upon me because of these. He has anointed me to declare hope to the unfortunate, or then those who were then not so rich in spirit. And he has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, and to preach release to the captives and the sign of the blind, and to put at liberty those who are then downtrodden by Nahashatan, and to preach then the favorable ear of Yahweh. And he closed the Megillah and gave it back. Thus we were reading the spring feast, found in Leviticus the 23rd chapter from the 1st verse through the 21st verse. Thus his objective was, this is going to give him then the authority of going forward and completing the spring feast. Do you know what 22nd verse of the 23rd chapter of Leviticus is? Do not cut the corners of the field. And then the autumn feast. So Mashiach is not playing games. You know, when the Jewish people, they only read and they don't produce fruit from what the Mashiach has said to do and observe, they are also eaters and they don't produce. They make their own congregations and they want to be convenient only to themselves. So as then those Christians and others outside who never learn of the originals, yet they only eat the corners of the field and they don't learn how to plant it. Worst yet, when both of them they join up together and eat in the corners themselves. Nobody wants anymore how to plant the field. The Creator himself very wisely has chosen his only Son because he is part of himself. Jewish congregations, they don't like when a person says the name of the Creator, because they don't want to bear the responsibility of listening to his name. Because when his name is spoken, they understand the Son has already come. And his name is Yahweh Yeshua. And when he was reading the holy instructions, was not the Son reading, was the Creator himself. That's why they were afraid of him. Now, are they going to be afraid of him or to be joined up with him? The history of Israel is not a very nice one because they have destroyed its own prophets. Israel wanted the convenience of the whole deal, but then they have shunned the obligations, such as speaking with the Gentiles properly what means the word. It is amazing how Christians, most of them are lazy. They are simply lazy. They want to sit around, they don't want to be involved with any kind of a law. And then, in quote, the Hebrew people have to take the corners of the field and then throwing at them. So they eat and they eat and they sin and they eat and they eat and they sin. And they never learn how to become a worthy worker and then plant the field. The Messiah is not playing games. Is it true that a person should be concerned with the instructions? Absolutely. The foundation of the apostles and prophets are related with the Torah directly. Should learn the Torah. Then are these people doing what the Messiah said to do and observe? Not very often. The congregation of the Hebrews, they are not doing what the Messiah told them to do. As if they are stuck in the first tabernacle service yet. Are there many kinds of opinions? Of course. But there is only a path. So then, the Messiah himself was in the desert for 40 days. When he came back from there, he did not perform any kinds of miracles. From the desert, he went straight into the synagogue and was given him then the prophecy of Yeshayahu the prophet related with the spring feast found in Leviticus. The nation of Israel had trained these feasts for more than 1,000 years prior of his coming. So they were familiar with it. And the Messiah came from the desert explaining precisely the time of the completion of the spring feast has come. From then on, then began his ministry. The United States is a country that has everything that a person can imagine in this planet. Yet, it is the most lazy. It is absolutely incredible. In the spiritual understanding, they are extremely lazy. You don't find programs that do talk of Jews and Christians and who does what. No, they're trying to make a deal among themselves to make conveniencing the objective of the conversation. Either on one side, they only want to eat the corners and then sin, and eat the corners and sin, and eat the corners and sin. The other side is the law of Moses, and then gathering themselves and they want to be part of the world. Now let me ask you this, where is the gap where the Messiah then was very center explaining the duties of what to do? You know, the beliefs of Christians is absolutely disgusting. It is disgusting. The amount of crap they are involved with is absolutely incredibly disgusting and dirty. Don't you ever think a moment because you have a husband and a wife, and if you have oral sex, don't think it's okay. You are vile and you are dirty. You are blasphemous. And it is an abomination. If you are in a relationship, it's not for you to enjoy each other, it's for you then to become familiar with what the Messiah wants and work for His kingdom and then becoming testifiers on His behalf. If you have sex before your relationship of your husband and wife, you are also disgusting. I don't care who you are, if you are a pastor, if you are a teacher, if you are an evangelist or a rabbi. At some point, at some way, at some fashion, it has to have a stop, and then the Messiah must talk. And either we obey Him or we destroy our own souls. There is no half a term. The Christian world is disgusting. What they do, what they believe, it is disgusting. That's why most of the Jews who are cleaned and they do what God said for them to do and observe, and they understand and they consider the words of the Messiah, when they observe in the spirit what the Christians are involved with, can understand why they don't want to be involved with them. Because they are dirty. It doesn't mean the Christians they don't take a shower. That's not the point. Now, what they do, what they watch, what they speak, the jokes they are involved with, sensuality they are involved with, they stay clean for some time, then they get joined with the world, and they get joined with other men, and they come before a presence of some sort, and they think they are sons of God. No, they are not. In a relationship, oral sex is disgusting. Try to understand, not because you have a license of a husband and wife, you can do whatever you want. It's not the point. God said it's blasphemy. It is an abomination. It's putrid. Now let me ask you this. After being in a night of dirty sexual relationship and then you go to church, and you never learn. You grab the word here and there and, kind of read a few verses here and there and head back into the world. Linking up with the spirit of this world on stealing the corners of the field. Do you know what the corners of the field means? Let me give an example of the corners of the field. In order for a person back in the old days To go to Israel and eat from the corners of the field, you had to become a Jew. You had to become a Hebrew person and doing what the law states to do and observe prior of eating from the corners of the field, because those were planted by the Hebrews. Now, after the destruction of the holy cities, the miltha, the life-giving miltha that came from heaven and distributed amongst the cities of the Messiah to give them each of them as per the work they do, it became rampant, given to this world. And what do? They eat of it, and they eat of it, and they eat of it, and they do what is blasphemous and dirty and putrid. The Messiah was not playing games. And you can be sure of it, when the Messiah was in his mode of gathering the people and giving them directives, it wasn't very pleasing. However, you knew for sure where the truth was at and what the path was at. You knew for sure after he was talking. Now, the point is, if a person is going to walk in this path or not, it's another situation. But every one of them, they knew where the path was at. Please stay tuned. Much more coming up.